He won his last race 4 days before he died. And nobody knew. After the race at Dover, a reporter asked Kyle Busch how many more wins he wanted before he stopped racing. He looked at the camera and said, "You take whatever you can get, man. You never know when the last one is going to be, so cherish them all, trust me." Nobody in that room understood how heavy those words actually were. 4 days later, he was gone. This is the story NASCAR never wanted to tell. And today, on top of everything the Busch family has already been through, there is even more devastating news that has come to light. So let's go through all of it, from the very beginning, because this story deserves to be told the right way. On May 16th and 17th, 2026, Kyle Busch showed up at Dover Motor Speedway and looked like himself again. He climbed into the Truck Series car and put on a performance that reminded everyone exactly who he was. He led 147 laps and won the race in dominant fashion, his 69th Craftsman Truck Series victory, a record that belongs to him alone. Then, the very next day, he competed in the NASCAR All-Star Race, finishing 17th. Nobody watching that weekend had the slightest idea that those were the final laps of his career. He was laughing in interviews, joking with reporters, and carrying himself with the same energy that had defined 22 full seasons of professional racing. The sport had no idea it was watching its final chapter. But the warning signs had already been there for nearly 2 weeks before Dover. On May 10, 2026, during the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen International, something was clearly wrong. Near the end of the race, Kyle Busch came over the team radio and asked for a doctor to meet him the moment he finished. According to the TV broadcast, he had been battling a sinus cold all week, one that was being made significantly worse by the intense G-forces and the sharp elevation changes at the New York road course. Despite all of that, he stayed in the car. He finished the race in 8th place, his best Cup Series result of the entire 2026 season. Afterward, he told reporters plainly that he had a pretty bad cough during the race, downplaying it the way competitive athletes often do. He was still showing up. Still racing. Still fighting. That was Kyle Busch, the kind of man who would drive through a sinus infection at a road course, ask for a doctor over the radio, finish the race in the top 10, and then show up the very next weekend to win a truck race. He never stopped. Then came Wednesday, May 20th. Kyle Busch was not at a racetrack. He was not competing. He was at the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina, working in the Chevrolet Racing Simulator, doing exactly what he had always done, preparing, studying, trying to get better. That was his routine. That was his life. And then, sometime during that session, he became unresponsive. A 911 call was placed from the facility at approximately 5:32 p.m. The caller told the dispatcher, "I have got an individual that has shortness of breath, is very hot, thinks he's going to pass out and is coughing up some blood." The caller confirmed that the man was awake but was on the bathroom floor of the facility. Kyle Busch was transported immediately to a hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina. He never came home. On the morning of Thursday, May 21st, the Busch family released a short statement through Kyle's social media channels. It read, "Kyle has experienced a severe illness resulting in hospitalization. He is currently undergoing treatment and will not compete in any of his scheduled activities this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway. We ask for understanding and privacy as our family navigates this situation." Fans were worried, but most believed he would pull through. This was Kyle Busch, a two-time champion who had come back from a compound leg fracture and a broken foot in 2015 to win the entire Cup Series championship that same year. The idea that something could truly take him down felt almost impossible. Then, just hours later, the joint statement arrived. The Busch family, Richard Childress Racing, and NASCAR released the following words together. "On behalf of the Busch family, everyone at Richard Childress Racing and all of NASCAR, we are devastated to announce the sudden and tragic passing of Kyle Busch." The reactions came fast, and they were raw. Denny Hamlin, his former teammate at Joe Gibbs Racing, posted on social media, "Absolutely cannot comprehend this news. We just need to think of his family during this time. We love you, KB." Brad Keselowski wrote, "Absolute shock. Very hard to process." Jimmy Johnson, who had raced alongside Kyle for years, told CBS Mornings the next morning, "I'm kinda lost for words at this moment, but we're gonna miss you, buddy. Gone too soon to say the least. He described Kyle as just that spirited, ruthless competitor on track, and said, if you took an inch, he was going to take two. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., who had one of the most complicated and well-documented relationships with Kyle in the entire sport, released an emotional tribute that the entire NASCAR community needed to read. On Saturday, May 23, the Busch family released a follow-up statement with the official cause of death. It read, the medical evaluation provided to the Busch family concluded that severe pneumonia progressed into sepsis, resulting in rapid and overwhelming associated complications. The family asks for continued understanding and privacy during this difficult time. What had presented as a sinus cold at Watkins Glen on May 10 had developed into severe pneumonia without anyone fully realizing the extent of it. That pneumonia then progressed into sepsis, a life-threatening condition in which the body's response to infection begins to damage its own tissues and organs. The complications were rapid. They were overwhelming. And they claimed the life of one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever produced at just 41 years old. To understand why NASCAR came to a complete stop on May 21, 2026, you have to understand exactly who Kyle Busch was in this sport. He won 63 Cup Series races, 9th on the all-time list. He won the Cup Series championship in 2015 and again in 2019, both with Joe Gibbs Racing. He recorded 102 wins in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and 69 wins in the Craftsman Truck Series, both all-time records. Add those numbers together, and you get 234 total wins across NASCAR's 3 national series. More than any driver in the history of the sport. He held the record for 19 consecutive seasons with at least one win, from 2004 through 2023. Through his ownership of Kyle Busch Motorsports, he developed future Cup stars including Eric Jones and Christopher Bell, winning 100 Truck Series races and 2 championships from 2010 to 2023. He was known as Rowdy, a nod to the character from Days of Thunder, and he wore that name like armor. Fans either loved him intensely or spent entire race days hoping he would lose. Either way, they watched. Every single week. That was his power. What made his death even harder for the NASCAR world to process was the context of where his career stood. After winning 3 races in his debut season at Richard Childress Racing in 2023, the wins stopped completely. He entered 2026 having not visited Victory Lane in the Cup Series since June 4, 2023, at Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, a winless streak that had crossed 100 races. The 2026 season began with a stunning moment of hope when Kyle Busch won the pole position for the Daytona 500, his first ever front-row start for the sport's biggest race in 22 attempts. But that qualifying lap stood as the lone highlight of a painful season. Through the first 9 races, he had not posted a single top 10 finish. His worst result came at Kansas Speedway, where he finished 35th 4 laps down. A public feud with former teammate Denny Hamlin escalated at Talladega, where Kyle responded to criticism by saying, "It's frustrating. Because I feel like I've done nothing except positive things in the time in which I've been at RCR. The last 4 years I've done nothing but work as hard as I could possibly do. Despite all of it, the losing streak, the criticism, the physical illness he was carrying into every race weekend, he never parked the car. He never quit." He won at Dover on May 16th, and looked like he was building towards something again. He never got the chance to find out what that something was. Kyle Busch is survived by his wife Samantha, whom he married on New Year's Eve 2010, his son Brexton, who turned 11 the Monday before his father passed, and his 4-year-old daughter Lennox. In the weeks before his death, Kyle had spoken openly about how much his son motivated him to keep pushing through the hardest stretch of his career. He said, "Brexton doesn't really remember the days of me being out there winning all the time, winning all the races and being thrown up in the air." That was a little before his memory time. That quote now sits differently than it did when he first said it. His brother Kurt Busch, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, received his Hall of Fame induction jacket in January 2026 with Kyle standing right beside him. Now Kurt has to bury his little brother, the same little brother he predicted greatness for all the way back in 2001. Dale Earnhardt Jr. addressed the complicated history between the two men directly in his tribute, writing, "Kyle was one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. No one can deny that. But he was also a father, a husband, brother, son, and a friend to many. My heart is broken for the Busch family. He also confirmed that it was Kyle who had reached out first to repair their relationship, writing, "It was he who made the effort for that to be possible." NASCAR announced that it is retiring Kyle's stylized No. 8 permanently, with the car to be held in reserve until Brexton Busch is old enough to carry it forward. The Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway went ahead as scheduled on Sunday, May 24th, 3 days after his death. Kyle's number 8 was freshly painted onto the infield grass at the entrance to Turn 1. All 39 cars in the field carried a Kyle Busch decal. On lap 8, both the public address system and the TV broadcast went completely silent in his memory. NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell stood beside Samantha Busch and the couple's 2 children before the race and said, "Kyle Busch is NASCAR. He was one of a kind and there will never be another." He looked at the family and added, "Samantha, I want you to know that this sport stands with you, and that you and your children are NASCAR family forever." At the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Dale Coyne Racing Team changed the font on Romain Grosjean's car to mirror the font Kyle used throughout his 14 years at Joe Gibbs Racing and raced it with the number 18. On lap 18, the Speedway's scoring pylon was lit up with Kyle Busch's name, face, and the years 1985 to 2026. And when the Coca-Cola 600 ended, shortened by rain, it was Daniel Suarez who took the checkered flag. An emotional Suarez dedicated the win to the man who had helped him find his footing in NASCAR back in 2015, saying simply, "It's for Kyle. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here." Kyle Busch was 41 years old. He was in the middle of his 22nd full-time season. He won his last race 4 days before he died. And in the end, the only fitting tribute was exactly what the sport gave him. Every car on the track wearing his name, and the crowd falling silent on lap 8, because sometimes silence says everything words cannot. Like, subscribe, drop your favorite Kyle Busch memory in the comments, and share this with every NASCAR fan you know. Rowdy deserves that.